It was exactly 300 a.m. when the first infrared silhouette crossed the eastern wall of the presidential compound in Ouagadougou. The air was heavy, not just with the weight of humidity clinging to the concrete walls, but with something far more dangerous: silence engineered by intent. Nothing creaked, nothing moved, and that was the first sign something was wrong. What the assassins didn't know was that Captain Ibrahim Traoré hadn't slept for 3 nights. Not since the warning came, not since the name Operation Lantern Dust appeared in a decrypted Russian intelligence file passed anonymously to a Burkinabe diplomat in Algiers. The tip had been vague but chilling. They will strike when he's weakest, before dawn, inside the palace, and they are not alone. The plan had been rehearsed down to the breath. 5 men, former French Foreign Legion, and 1 ex-CIA specialist dropped into the country under the guise of NGO security advisors. 2 had diplomatic passports. The others were ghosts. No names, no records, only retinal implants and back-channel clearances. They weren't here to destabilize, they were here to end. But what they underestimated was the man they were coming for. To understand that night, you must first understand the man who was waiting behind that bedroom door. Ibrahim Traoré, born in the dust-stained outskirts of Bondoukoui, raised under a tin roof with no running water, had grown up believing that freedom had a price. He had seen too much blood spilled in the name of peacekeeping, and too many leaders fall, not because of weakness, but because they didn't know when they were being hunted. He wasn't going to make that mistake. 2 weeks before the attack, the palace security chief, Colonel Yakuba Sissoko, had noticed a gap in drone coverage along the northern perimeter. It was subtle, just 5 minutes of blank sky, but it had happened 3 times. At the same time, a new cleaning staff supervisor was recommended by a UN liaison, and a satellite phone registered to a logistics company in Dubai began pinging local towers near the Ministry of Communications. Patterns. That's what Traoré believed in, and patterns were emerging. He moved his sleeping quarters. Not far, just 1 floor beneath the ceremonial suite in a reinforced basement built decades ago during the Sankara era, originally meant as a shelter from coup attempts. It was there in that cold chamber where he now waited in silence. The Beretta M9 heavy in his palm, his breath calm, his eyes fixed on the live feed streaming silently on the mounted screen in front of him. He watched the assassins enter his bedroom upstairs. The bed was made. The lights dimmed. The illusion was perfect. But so was his resolve. The plan they had stolen from the French military playbook was flawless on paper. First man clears the hallway. Second disables the surveillance node. Third enters fourth, confirms the target. Fifth executes. It had worked in Sudan. It had worked in Libya. But Burkina Faso was not Libya, and Ibrahim was not a general grown soft on ceremony. Back in Paris, inside a war room hidden beneath the Ministry of the Armed Forces, 3 men monitored the mission from a secure link. One of them, a civilian in a charcoal suit, sipped espresso and leaned forward as the screen showed the 4 assassins breaching the upper level. Target bedroom accessed, came the whisper through the earpiece. No movement. Proceeding. Traoré heard the same words through his own feed, and he smiled. 2 floors up, the lead operative, a tall man with an Eastern European gait and American tattoos, opened the bedroom door. The room was dark, save for a faint red glow coming from the corner, an incense burner used for traditional prayers. The silence was too complete. The bed was too perfect, and the air smelled wrong of dust, not sweat. Before he could speak, a high-frequency static burst through his earpiece. Calms down. That was the moment. Inside the war room, the feed went black. Inside the palace, the trap closed. From the vents above, the false bedroom gas hissed, silently engineered by local chemists to disorient but not kill. It was a signal, not a weapon. The assassins staggered, eyes burned. They reached for goggles. Too late. From the stairwell below, shadows emerged. 12 men, All members of the newly formed Unité Noire trained by North Korean special advisors, deployed silently, no insignia, no radios, each knowing their role like chess pieces moved by instinct. One assassin reached for his gun. A tranquilizer dart hit him in the neck. Another fired wildly. Rubber bullets slammed into his knees. No blood, just pain. Controlled, surgical, efficient. Meanwhile, in the command chamber beneath the palace, Traoré stood calm as ever. He stepped into the hallway as the final target was being zip-tied to the cold marble floor. Colonel Sissoko approached. All four secured. The fifth never entered. We think he was external command. Where is he now? Traoré asked, already knowing. Sissoko hesitated. Escaped. No, said Traoré. He's watching. And he was right. Somewhere in Accra, inside a luxury hotel under a false name, a man stared at his laptop. He watched as 4 black bags were placed over the heads of his men. No executions, no statements, just silence. Then the screen faded to white. And then to a message written in French. We do not need to show blood to prove our strength, but we know who sent you. This was a warning. He closed the laptop. The mission had failed. Worse, it had been predicted. And that meant only one thing. Ibrahim Traoré was no longer just a target. He was a player. And the game had changed. By sunrise, the streets of Ouagadougou were alive with movement, but unaware of the storm that had just been averted. Markets opened, bread was sold, radios played patriotic jingles. But inside the presidential palace, the air was different, denser, electric. Ibrahim Traoré stood at the center of a high-security briefing room, surrounded by his most loyal officers and intelligence staff. A wall of monitors behind him showed grainy night vision footage, blurred silhouettes, thermal outlines, and a single paused frame of a man standing in his own empty bedroom. This was not a message, he said quietly. It was a test. Colonel Sissoko nodded. We intercepted chatter out of Loma. A satellite call bounced through Côte d'Ivoire. We traced it to a burner network operating under diplomatic cover. The voice print matches a known contractor, Jacques Morel. Traoré turned his head slightly. He knew the name. Morel was former DGSE France's foreign intelligence. Disavowed publicly after an unauthorized operation in Mali, went sideways but still very much active in the invisible wars of the Sahel. Traoré had heard rumors Libya, Niger, even Chad. Now he had come for Burkina Faso. But Traoré wasn't planning to react the way they expected. He didn't call a press conference. He didn't announce the raid. Instead, he doubled the silence. Every detail of the attempted assassination was classified. The footage locked away the captured men held in a black site off the grid far from diplomatic reach. Burkina Faso's leader knew that in a world of narratives, sometimes the most powerful move was to deny your enemies a story. But that didn't mean he wasn't preparing one. Within 24 hours, discreet envoys were dispatched to Moscow and Tehran. Not for weapons, but for data. Cyber teams, counterintelligence tools. Proof. Traoré didn't want revenge. He wanted exposure. He wanted the puppeteers to flinch. And that meant building a case so undeniable, so technically devastating, that no amount of Western PR could spin it. He also called someone he hadn't spoken to in nearly a decade, Captain Amadou Belko, his former rival at the military academy in Koudougou. Belko had once been exiled for insubordination, accused of sympathizing with Sankarist radicals who wanted to purge all foreign ties from Burkina Faso's economy. He had since disappeared into the jungle regions of the east, rumored to lead a shadow militia known only by whispers, the Dust Lions. That afternoon, a secure convoy headed east under the cover of a health inspection team. Inside it sat Traoré in civilian clothes, wearing a traditional hat and carrying nothing but a leather-bound journal. By nightfall, they arrived at an unmarked clearing deep in the bush, where fires burned in silence and a single drum tapped slowly in rhythm. Belko appeared from the shadows. Tall, older now, but still sharp-eyed, still dangerous. He did not speak. He simply opened his palm in greeting. Traoré clasped it. "I need your ears," the captain said, "not your guns." Belko raised an eyebrow. "No one ever comes out here without wanting both. They tried to kill me in my own bed. Not with soldiers, but with symbols. Former Legion, ex-CIA, diplomats wearing NGO jackets. This isn't just about me. They're bleeding Africa dry again through contracts, coups, and narratives. But this time they failed." Belko said nothing for a long time. Then finally, "Then it's time," the trees started whispering back. For the next 3 hours, inside a canvas tent, lit by a single oil lamp, they mapped out the invisible battlefield shell corporations in Belgium, shell NGOs in Abidjan, disinformation cells in Senegal, mercenary logistics in Ghana. Traoré wasn't just trying to survive. He was building a resistance that didn't need rifles. It needed eyes data and moral firepower. By the time he returned to the capital, another surprise awaited him: the last missing assassin. The fifth ghost, the external commander, had made contact. An envelope had been left outside the embassy gates. No fingerprints, no camera footage. Inside, a photo of Ibrahim Traoré as a child standing barefoot in front of a crumbling school with a single line scrawled in French across the back. "Power doesn't protect you. Memory does." Traoré held the photo for a long time. It was old, possibly stolen from a relative or his school records, but the message was clear. Whoever was behind this had studied him. They didn't just want his death. They wanted his unmaking. He placed the photo face down on his desk. Then he whispered, "Let's see who really remembers." The following week, a sudden diplomatic rupture shocked West Africa. A leaked video released anonymously through Pan-African social platforms showed one of the captured assassins confessing in full. He named his recruiter. He named the funders. He spoke of briefings in Niger passports prepared in Senegal and cash transfers through a Canadian mining firm tied to former French military personnel. The final 5 seconds of the video showed the assassin whispering a phrase, "La nuit de verre," the night of glass. And then the screen went dark. The Western embassies exploded with denial. France called it fabricated. The US said it was manipulated. But across Africa, a different truth was spreading. One not filtered through headlines, but through grief, memory, and hunger. The idea that maybe this time the narrative was breaking. And inside his real bedroom, at 3 a.m., exactly 1 week after the raid, Captain Ibrahim Traoré stood alone at the window, looking out over a sleeping city. He wasn't smiling. He was waiting, because he knew something no one else did. They would try again, and next time he wouldn't just be ready, he'd be hunting. In the days that followed the anonymous video release, the world turned its attention to West Africa, not through polished press briefings in Geneva or sanitized headlines in Western capitals, but through millions of screens lit by anger, disbelief, and something deeper, recognition. Across Bamako, Accra, Kinshasa, youths gathered in alleys and classrooms to replay the clip, pausing at every confession, every face. The old world order had blinked, and the continent saw it. The digital war had begun. Inside the Burkinabe presidential compound, Captain Ibrahim Traoré was no longer just a head of state. He was the face of an unfolding resistance, not just a soldier, not merely a symbol, but a crack in the silence. Every move he made now carried weight, and every delay could prove fatal. He knew another strike was coming, but he didn't know when or who would carry it. Intelligence chatter picked up coded references to Phase Delta. The phrase repeated in strange intervals across satellite phone relays stretching from Djibouti to Lisbon. There was no name, no map, no declared enemy, just a whisper shared between diplomats, former contractors, and men who didn't exist on any registry. Phase Delta meant total erasure. This time they wouldn't send assassins in the dark. They would collapse the system from within, An economic hit, a diplomatic freeze, a collapse of confidence engineered from invisible offices in Zurich, Ottawa, and London. Burkina Faso would not fall by gunfire, it would rot by design. So Traoré struck first. He launched Operation Saharan Flame, an unprecedented transparency initiative. Every military contract, every mining deal, every prior government's offshore transfer was released into the public domain. PDF files flooded local radio stations. Towns without Wi-Fi received the documents printed and delivered by motorcycle. The reaction was volcanic. People saw the numbers, the bribes, the ghost companies. They saw the French subsidiary that had drained $9 million from school funding in 2018. They saw the American security firm that had rerouted defense budgets under the guise of drone surveillance. The people saw and they remembered. Protests erupted, but not against Traoré. They marched with him, and that made him more dangerous than ever. In Brussels, a French general whispered, "He's building a moral army." In Langley, a retired CIA chief remarked, "He doesn't just survive attacks, he feeds off them." Meanwhile, somewhere in the Moroccan highlands, an encrypted briefing was taking place. Around a table sat 6 men. One of them, an older gentleman with a silver ring bearing the NATO star, tapped the table. "We've tried everything. Disinformation? Bribes? Covert action?" Another man replied, voice brittle, "And yet he grows." The ringed man leaned forward. "Then it's time we offer him the one thing he cannot survive." Silence. A deal. That same week, Traoré received an invitation. A private meeting, neutral ground, Ghanaian mediation. A summit cloaked in the language of peace, framed as a dialogue about regional security. He knew it was bait, but he also knew something else. Refusing might make him look paranoid. Accepting might give him a stage, and perhaps the chance to speak directly to the puppeteers behind the glass. He accepted. 3 days later, in a discreet coastal resort in Ghana, Ibrahim Traoré walked into a conference room where no cameras were allowed. Inside sat men whose names were unknown to the public, but whose policies shaped entire continents. Bankers, advisors, ghosts. They offered him everything. Debt relief, infrastructure packages, strategic security guarantees. In exchange, compliance, minerals, military discretion. Silence. He didn't speak at first. He just looked at them, at the men who had once trained the assassins who broke into his bedroom, who had orchestrated fuel shortages in his cities, who had sent fake journalists to smear his character. Then he leaned forward. "If I die tonight, Burkina Faso will mourn. But if I live tonight, the world will change." One of the men smiled thinly. "Captain, you're playing with giants." Traoré replied without blinking. "No, I'm waking them up." He stood, buttoned his coat, and left. No deal. And that night, the final card was played. A coordinated cyber attack began at 2:43 a.m., targeting the Burkinabe Ministry of Finance, the military's drone surveillance servers, and the national television station's broadcast infrastructure. At 2:57 a.m., the palace went dark. And at 3:00 a.m., exactly 7 weeks. Since the first raid, 5 heavily armed mercenaries breached the outer wall of the presidential compound. But this time, he wasn't just waiting in his bedroom. He was in the control room. He watched them enter on infrared. He watched them split into 2 teams, one toward the east wing, one toward the command stairs. And then, with the push of a single button, he sealed every exit. The corridors filled with tear gas. The power was cut again, but this time to them. The soldiers never saw the counter-team coming drawn. Not from the regular military, but from the newly trained Shadow Guard, an elite force built silently over the last 5 weeks. From Belco's jungle commandos, Malian defectors, and cyber war volunteers from Kinshasa. In 23 minutes, it was over. No casualties. 4 captured, 1 dead, and a laptop recovered. Inside it, direct correspondence with a military contractor based in Warsaw, one connected to an energy conglomerate that had been bidding for gold extraction rights in Burkina Faso for over a year. The next morning, the footage was broadcast not just on national television, but simultaneously across 31 African countries, translated into 7 major languages, and subtitled in Mandarin, Arabic, and Russian. The world saw it all: the raid, the laptop, the faces of those who had tried again to destroy one man in his sleep. But they failed. Because he wasn't asleep. He never was. Ibrahim Traoré stood before the cameras, scarred, exhausted, but unbroken. He didn't deliver a long speech. He simply looked into the lens and said, "You cannot kill a people's will with silence. You can only delay it. And that delay is over." That night across West Africa, candles burned in windows, not out of grief, but solidarity. They called it the Night of Firelight. And Ibrahim Traoré, once a quiet soldier from the north, became more than a president. He became a signal that even at 3 a.m., when the world sleeps, Africa watches back. And sometimes it's already waiting.